Hello budding doctors, welcome back to another video lesson from Rose Medical Lectures. I'm Tania Rose Jacob. In this video, we will be dealing with pathogenesis of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Introductory part as well as the cell wall structure we discussed in our previous video. I have given the link of that video in the description box of this video for getting some basic ideas about that. The slides based on this lecture and many medical flashcards are available in my Instagram page. The link of my Instagram page is given in the description box. Do follow. I hope that it will really help you guys. Okay, come to our topic. Pathogenesis of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. As we already discussed in the previous video, the source of infection of this bacteria can be a human source or it can be a bovine source, which means from cattle. Human can be the source of infection in case of pulmonary tuberculosis. The bovine source can be by the consumption of unpasteurized infected milk. Bovine source is not common now due to the availability of pasteurized milk. When we think about the mode of transmission of this bacteria or this infection, it can be a inhalational mode or inoculation or by ingestion. Inhalational mode is most common, and here the Mycobacterium tuberculosis is mainly transmitted by inhalation of droplet nuclei generated while this droplet nuclei is generated while coughing, sneezing or speaking with infected patients. There are as many as 3000 infectious nuclei per cough. Other mode of transmissions include inoculation, which is actually uncommon. In inoculation mode of transmission, the transmission of infection is through the direct skin contact with the infected person. I already told you the transmission by inoculation is uncommon. Third mode of transmission is by ingestion. The infants may swallow the sputum or it can spread by the consumption of unpasteurized milk. But most common mode of transmission is by inhalation, and we will be dealing with this now. Next, let's discuss about the risk factors which are favoring the transmission of this infection. First one, sputum positive patients which transmit most effectively than sputum negative patients. Sputum positive means the sputum showing acid fast tubercle bacilli on microscopy. Second one is bacillary load. At least 10 raised to 4 bacilli per milliliter in sputum is required for an effective transmission. Third one is adult patients with cavitary lesions in lung have more bacillary load in sputum and transmit efficiently. Fourth one is overcrowding in poorly ventilated rooms. Even though these are the risk factors, not everyone won't get infection if your immune response are good. Immunocompromised patients like HIV patients are more prone to this infection when they are exposed to this bacteria because they are having very low cell mediated immunity. The post-silicosis patients, post-transplantation patients and patients who has undergone jejunal bypass and gastrectomy, hemodialysis as well as IV drug abusers have high risk of TB when they exposed to this bacteria. Late adolescence and early childhood periods are more prone to this bacteria. If we consider the people belong to the age group 25 to 35 years, women are at risk. But when we consider older ages, men have greater risk. Now we are going to discuss about pathogenesis. We know this bacteria get transmitted mainly through respiratory aerosols while coughing, sneezing, etc. These aerosols can suspend in air for several hours before sedimenting to the floor. So when a healthy person comes in contact with the respiratory aerosol, bacteria enters the upper respiratory tract of this person. Upper respiratory tract has ciliary lining which helps in clearing the bacteria and abnormal antigen. Consider a situation where 5 to 10% of this bacteria entered the upper respiratory tract by overcoming all these obstacles and reaches the alveoli. Our alveoli has macrophage and these macrophage have complement response which can detect the bacteria. These complement receptors and mannose receptors present on the surface of macrophages bind with the lipoarabinomannan or LAM located on the bacterial surface. This leads to internalization of bacilli. When these two things bind with the help of complement like C3b, there will be phagocytosis inside the macrophage. Arabinogalactone on the surface of this bacteria prevent the fusion of phagosome and lysosome and thus prevent the formation of phagolysosome. By doing so, it badly affects the defense mechanism of macrophage and we won't be able to destroy the bacteria. The bacteria starts to live in our body. It does like this by inhibiting the increase in intracellular calcium and phosphatidyl inositol 3-phosphate. And finally, it prevents the formation of phagolysosome. Now, the bacteria is inside the macrophage, but we are not able to digest it. So next, let's discuss about the host immune response against this bacteria when once this bacteria enters. We have cell-mediated immune response and humoral immune response. We know humoral immunity is also known as antibody-mediated immunity. With assistance from helper T cells, the B cells will differentiate into plasma B cells that can produce antibodies against a specific antigen. The humoral immune system deals with the antigen from the pathogens that are freely circulating or outside the infected cells. Because of this reason, humoral immunity has minor role in case of Mycobacterium tuberculosis since this bacteria is an obligate intracellular organism. Th2 cells derived cytokines such as interleukin 4 and interleukin 5 activate the B cells to produce antibodies and this have minor role here. However, the anti-LAM or anti-lipoarabinomannan antibodies play a role in preventing the dissemination of tuberculosis in children. It's about humoral immune response in TB. Next, let's discuss about the cell-mediated immune response. In cell-mediated immunity, the macrophages present the mycobacterial antigens to Th or helper T cells and activate the T helper cells into Th1 and Th2. Th1 cells release a cytokine such as interleukin 2 and interferon gamma which activate the macrophage and monocytes. The activation of Th1 cells leads to the development of two immune responses. First one macrophage activating response and the second one tissue damaging response. The balance between the macrophage activating response and tissue damaging response determine the outcome of infection. Normally, the macrophage activating response should be more and tissue damaging response should be less for successful outcome. Because of the macrophage activating response, the person should be able to control the infection. Through the tissue damaging response, the patient will be able to come out of the disease with very less morbidity, fibrotic nodules and not much lung damage. From above discussed part, I hope that you got an idea that the T helper cell 1 is more useful in TB. Next, let's see what is macrophage activated response. The Th1 cells release the interferon gamma which activates the resting alveolar macrophages into activated macrophages which are capable of killing and digesting the tubercle bacilli. The activated macrophages aggregate around the center of the lesion and form characteristic granuloma called tubercle. Presence of granuloma or tubercle in infected tissue is one of the hallmark of tuberculosis disease. Formation of tubercle is a favorable sign too. There are of two types, hard tubercles and soft tubercles. First, let's see what is hard tubercle. Like the name, they are hard initially and composed of activated macrophages like epithelioid cells and giant cells which is present at the center and surrounded by lymphocyte and fibroblast. Later, you can see the soft tubercle. The hard tubercle sometimes get converted to soft tubercle. Central part of hard tubercle undergo caseous necrosis where it form the cheesy material and form soft tubercle. This will be able to control the further spread of this infection because the viable bacilli remain dormant within the macrophage or within the necrotic material. If the bacteria was there in the necrotic area, this bacteria face oxygen deficiency. since it is obligate aerobe. I hope you understand the importance of macrophage activating response. In this diagram, you can see the two parts. First one, infection before the activation of cell-mediated immunity, and the second part, the initiation and consequences of cell-mediated immunity. When once the cell-mediated immunity is initiated, the alveolar macrophage or the antigen-presenting cells present the bacterial antigens to the T cells. The T cells then converted to the Th1 and Th2, and the Th1 have role here. What the Th1 do is, the Th1 activate the macrophages and there will be the monocyte recruitment and finally the granuloma formation. You can see everything over here in this diagram. And next let's move on to the tissue damaging response. This response is commonly seen in immunocompromised patients and if the macrophages are not so effective. Here, the mycobacterial growth can be inhibited only by an intensified delayed hypersensitivity reaction or DTH, which leads to lung tissue destruction. In tissue damaging response, the caseous necrosis become liquefied and these large number of bacilli spread. This bacteria spread to other part by mainly three ways. First one, direct draining into the airways and then to the environment while coughing and sneezing. Second one, lymphatic spread is lymphatic spread and there will be receding into the same or opposite lung and then disseminate to other organs. Third one is hematogenous spread to the various organs. Next, let's see what is Koch's phenomenon. We know Koch's phenomenon is well known as a skin reaction that appears within a few days at the BCG vaccination site if the vaccination is given to a person infected with TB. Let's consider two experimental conditions. First one, let's take a healthy guinea pig where we inject the virulent tubercle bacilli into the healthy guinea pig. There will be no immediate local lesion. But after 10 to 14 days, a nodule is formed at the site of inoculation with enlarged caseous local lymph node. Finally, it leads to the death of that animal due to the progressive TB involving the several organs. Second one is, we are going to inject the virulent tubercle bacilli into a guinea pig that is previously exposed to the tubercle bacilli. This pig develop an inturition at the site of inoculation in 2 to 3 days, which progresses into a shallow ulcer, but this ulcer heals without systematic involvement. It's about today's video. If you like my video, please don't forget to subscribe my channel. Follow me on Instagram because many medical flashcards and slides based on this lecture are available in my Instagram page. The link of my Insta page is given in the description box of this video. Check there and thank you for watching. Take care.